Hi, everybody. John Haldy here, and I am super excited that Jon Stanley of Synergy Solutions is joining us. John, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
So, John, for those who don't know you, can we do a brief intro? You are the co-founder of Synergy Solutions, is that right?
Yeah. So my title's managing partner, but I helped found Synergy Solutions along with Johnny Mullins, and yeah, we've been going at it for about 2 years now.
And Synergy Solutions is focused on?
So we're a transportation and safety management consulting firm, primarily for really anything that has wheels. We help provide safety support services and transportation management support services.
And I learned recently at a different meeting that you and Johnny have also started another company, Driver Education Network. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we also own Driver Education Network. We started Driver Education Network after we started Synergy Solutions because we found there was a gap in the training part of the commercial motor vehicle world. And so we created Driver Education Network to create a simplified way to provide recurrent and remedial training to the commercial motor vehicle drivers in the industry.
So that's like safety videos targeted for certain issues and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's all safety videos, and we send it directly to drivers' phones. It's a link. They click on it. They watch it. There's no LMS system. It's really great.
Gotcha. So the reason I wanted to have you on, John, you and I have had an opportunity to work on a few things together, and I've just been awed by the breadth and depth of your experience in the safety space, as well as your passion for this topic. So I was hoping that you'd let me sort of pick your brain, and we'll see where the conversation goes and just talk all things safety. So
yeah, absolutely, man. That's what I love doing. Let's do it.
So in learning a bit recently for some other folks like Dale Knox of Vorsic, who I think you've met before, I'm learning about safety. I mean, I was a complete neophyte on this, and I find it fascinating. And maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that from your position, you've got to kind of tackle two different things. Number one, you've got to work with owners to get them to get the right mindset of how to build a safety program that's going to be effective. But then at the same time, you've got to probably use different tactics on how to train drivers to be safer drivers, right? That it's not quite the same methodology.
Yeah, they're completely different, and really, owners of companies tend to struggle with safety being the back burner, right? I can't invest in safety because I need to invest in this in order to keep my doors open. And sometimes they forget that safety is what closes your doors. And drivers really just don't understand their role in safety. They don't understand where do I belong in the safety program, and the past traditions of safety have been bad cop versus good cop, and usually you get bad cop in safety, and it puts that bad taste in that driver's mouth for the rest of their career. So we spend a lot of time trying to change perceptions, both with owners and with drivers, and that's crucial in building any successful safety program.
I'm dying to dig into both of those. Where would you like to start, with drivers or with owners?
Either one, man. Both of them are just as important, right? Yeah.
Let's start with owners, because I think more owners are going to be watching this than drivers. And yeah, let's go with owners. Is it fair to ask you to share some stories on like what's the good that you see sometimes, what's the bad, and what's the really ugly about what you see with owners and how they approach the safety programs?
Yeah, I have a lot of great examples when it comes to owners and their buy-in to their safety program. So, we deal with a company that from the very start, I mean, ownership was bought in. Like we're going to change the culture, we're going to change the program, and they got their team involved. And every meeting we ever have with them, everybody's present, and you can feel the change in their culture because it's a top-down change. They knew that they had some work to do, but they were already really good. And for me, I always wondered, well, why are they investing in their safety program so much if their program was already good? And then we got involved with them and realized there was so much missing, and they knew that they were missing, but didn't have the capacity to build it. And that's usually where they struggle. So I think owners have to be involved. They have to stay involved. This company, owners at every meeting, they're pushing the program, they're pushing their desires, their wants, their needs, and their team carries out those desires, wants, and needs for them. But then I go into other companies where you get somebody who's like, it's been 6 months and I haven't shown up to any meetings. You should handle this for me. I don't want to be involved. And they go nowhere. Drivers don't show up to safety meetings. Drivers don't, download the apps for the various things to receive coaching or whatever their programs might be. And you can see the difference. You can see the lost dollars go up when they're not involved, and you see where they are involved, lost dollars are low. I've got this company that their losses are minimal. I think they've maybe had $15,000 in losses in the entire year, and then there are 100 trucks with 15 grand in losses. And then you have a 20 truck company who's got $700,000 in losses because the owner is not involved with the program. That's
so I got to ask questions because this is new stuff for me. When you talk losses, is this insurance company losses or is this out of pocket for the company?
Total everything, insurance and out of pocket.
And forgive me, folks watching may already know this, but if you have $700,000 in losses in a year with an insurance company, what happens to your premiums? I know
you're through the roof. You're probably paying $26,000 a year per unit. That's significant as opposed to $8 grand a year.
So forgive me, I'm a numbers guy. 18,000 more, and if you got 20 trucks, that's like 360 grand more a year.
Right. Plus the 700,000 you paid in losses.
With whatever the deductibles were, right?
Right.
So from a cost benefit or an ROI standpoint, do you have trouble getting owners to understand that it's not just a culture of safety because you want to go to meetings and raise your hand and say I'm safe? It's good for the bottom line. No, I mean, this isn't fuzzy math.
The ones who have the ability to calculate and understand their finances, they get it. I think one of the biggest problems we see in the industry is a lot of guys coming in who don't have that experience. They don't have the business knowledge. They're not business savvy. And those are the ones who are struggling. And I think it's because they just don't understand. They don't understand the numbers. It doesn't make sense to them. They see dollar signs in cheap equipment. They see dollar signs in cheap drivers. They see dollar signs in running as fast as you can and gaining as many miles as possible. Instead, they're losing so much money on the insurance side, they're losing so much money on the loss side, that if they would just invest half of what they're investing in cheap trucks and cheap drivers and running really fast in their safety program, they would be far more profitable. And that's part of the problem. We haven't done a good job educating some of these business owners. And that's really what I spend my time in my safety program is, look, here's your losses. Let me cut them in half for you. If I just cut your losses in half, what would that look like? And all you have to do is this, right? One task, manage your cameras. I can cut your losses in half, right? It's pretty simple. And once they can see those numbers and we paint it for them and they actually see it in action, then it starts to change. But owners they've got to know where they're spending their money. And it's not just in labor and fuel and equipment. It's in accidents, it's in losses, it's in hiring poor drivers.
So can I dig into that for a moment? Because this is good stuff for me. Dumb question, because I'm not an owner. I've never been an owner. Is there anything different about the FedEx world where some of the insurance might be borne by FedEx, and so these owners don't see the dollar impact, or it comes indirectly?
Here's my perception of the FedEx world, and I got two answers for you. So yes, there is some onus on FedEx, which helps carry some of that burden. But my experience with what I've seen with the FedEx group, and really for the third party contractors, is those are some of the most brilliant business people I've come across. A lot of those individuals have come out of finance, or they come from some other sort of business. They understand the numbers. Most of them. I'm sure there's a few in there that are struggling, but most of them are really educated. And I think they know how to look at their profitability. They know how to look at their finances and their dollars. They've got some really good tools out there that help them with that. And I think that's the difference than probably your traditional over the road trucking companies and some of these other smaller outfits, that they don't have access to some of that. And they're old drivers that grew up in the business. But FedEx, all my engagement with the FedEx contractors, I've been really impressed with their ability to understand business. So they're already
two things. Number one, you're painting as though the people coming from finance are the smart people, or the educated people are coming into contracting are the smart ones. I got to stick up for the fact that I know some folks who started out driving one truck, and they've got large companies, and they're some of the smartest people I've ever met. And I also know some people who are extremely well educated and could not be any dumber.
right. They're out there,
Education
right?
doesn't equal smart.
Yeah, I think
went to a good school.
It's more experience, and it's experience, right? Because the guys who started with one truck, who grew up in the business, maybe they started with one truck with FedEx and they've grown into 20 or 30 trucks. The ones that are successful paid attention, but they also went out and educated themselves, right? They went out and it was education of hard knocks. They made some mistakes along the way. They learned from those mistakes, and they've been able to grow and expand their business based off of what they've learned. They've also collaborated and networked with other people in the industry, or they've sought out help from people like you that have created things for them to be successful. And I think that's the difference that I'm seeing, because I deal with a lot of different types of companies. I mean, I deal with tow, I deal with limousine, I deal with trucking. I mean, all sorts of different types of businesses. And the people that I've dealt with within FedEx and engaged with and networked with understand their numbers. Now, I think where people in that world are struggling is, how do I take those numbers and actually build it into a plan that's going to drive results? So
I would argue too, though, that the world of insurance and low probability, high impact events. I did a stint in option trading before I ever got into this space, and we used to call it tail risk. Right, you've got a bell curve, and that things that happen way out on that low probability end of the bell curve that could really impact you. People are very bad at quantifying that.
Yeah,
very bad at understanding what could happen there. And that's not just FedEx or trucking. That's across the board.
right.
So I want to get, from my own curiosity, you mentioned that normally you might pay $8,000 a year in premiums for a truck for liability insurance. Is that the right term, liability insurance?
Yeah, I mean, the average for a new company coming in is I'm seeing all sorts of numbers right now, but I'm seeing anywhere from 8,000 to 18,000 for a new company. If you're above 18,000, there's something wrong. And that's kind of the indication that you've got some problems that you probably need to address.
And in the FedEx world, the contractors are paying that, or is FedEx paying part of that?
The FedEx is paying part of that. So FedEx is going to carry a lot of the bulk of that, but you're still going to have a portion of that.
And when you have an accident and the premiums go up, is FedEx sticking all that premium increase on the contractor, or is FedEx eating part of it?
So I would imagine that with FedEx, the insurance isn't going to go up a whole lot. I think where you get dinged with FedEx is what tier you're placed in, and that's going to start creating some struggle for you, right? So,
So for those,
but I would imagine they're going to pass some cost on to their contractors at some point, if that insurance keeps climbing, which it will naturally.
oh, I've heard from a lot of corners that they are sticking a sharp stick right in the eye of contractors because there's a mandate internally at FedEx to reduce their, I think it's $400 million a year exposure to liability that they've got. And
Yeah.
somebody's been told, we've got to get the incentives aligned so that contractors feel more pain, so they take this more seriously. So,
I mean, the great part with buying your insurance through FedEx is you're running on that self-insured platform. I guarantee you FedEx is self-insured. They probably have an underwriter, obviously, that's managing their claims, or a third-party claims management. But you know, there's some benefit to that, but then you're at their mercy, right? Which is a struggle, huge struggle.
so if we take it as a given that if you're operating unsafely, it's a matter of time before the costs for that are coming back at you, right?
Yeah, can I break that down just a little bit?
Please.
So here's my analysis of companies who are running unsafe, and there's a lot of different factors that are going to go into how much this is going to cost you. So let's start with retaining drivers. Human beings are naturally drawn to structure. That's why we have guidance and rules as parents. That's why we provide our children with curfews. That's why we provide them with guidelines, and this is what I expect from you. Human beings are naturally drawn to that.
That's why people want to be in the military.
Right. That's why we go to the military. And if you look at the military's recruiting, it is the #1 recruiting process in the entire nation. You can't find a better recruiting program. And you know, they're signing up people to go die in the desert, right? So because there's structure built behind that. So when you look at families that are successful at raising their kids, it's because they have structure. When you look at families, and we could go into a whole gamut of this, families that don't have structure, there's problems, right? There's some mental illness. There's all sorts of issues that come out of that crime, increased gang activity, etc. Right? Structure is good. So if you don't have a safety program, one, you're not providing structure for your employees. So your turnover rate on your employees is going to be way above average. You will lose drivers. You'll lose your good drivers. You'll constantly retain the bad drivers because no safety program means I'm not going to hold you accountable. Therefore, the bad drivers who don't want to be held accountable, like, you know, let's call it crime, right, will flourish. It'll run rampant throughout your entire operation. So if you want to retain drivers, build a safety program. So there's recruiting costs of drivers that you're gonna be exposed to by not having a program. Then you have the exposure to loss, exposure to accidents. So increased premiums on your insurance, increased losses, increased dollars going out, paying for damages, paying for, you know, accidents if you choose to handle them on your own, and then if you report them to insurance, which there's this big myth, you know, if I report to insurance, it's bad, so we don't report, and then I report, you know, 45 days late because all of a sudden it turns into a $100,000 claim. And now it's going to actually not be a $100,000 claim, but rather a $500,000 claim because I waited too long to get people involved. That's a big problem, not having a safety program. We fear our insurance because if I make a claim, my insurance premiums go up. Well, that's true to a point, but most insurance premiums go up because you don't have a program. If you have a program, you reduce your accidents. It's pretty simple. So then you have your accident cost. But then there's the big one out there that everybody's afraid of now that I'm sure a lot of people have talked about, and that's the plaintiff attorney attacks that exist in the industry. We're under attack because your vehicle doesn't say your transportation company name on the side of it. It doesn't say FedEx on the side of it. It doesn't say whatever it is on the side. It says I have $1 million insurance policy and you can sue me for $1 million, and you have about a 95% chance of winning. That's reality, right? And these plaintiff attorneys are using a tactic called reptile theory. And reptile theory is, I'm going to use your negligence, I'm going to paint a picture of negligence on your part that's going to say to the jury that this company, if you don't do something to stop them, is going to end up killing your family on the highway. They start tapping into those internal emotions with the jury and getting them connected to them being physically hurt by this company if they don't give them a large fine or whatever. Okay. So not having a program is a gateway for those plaintiff attorneys to start attacking you in that sense. So we have an accident because you hired a driver who has a history of speeding, a history of reckless driving, a history of whatever, and that's on record. And you don't pull that, and you don't use that as a form of gauging if you're going to hire that person or not. You're going to end up going to court because that person will get in an accident. And it might be a fender bender, but that fender bender will turn into the largest fender bender that ever existed in the history of man. And it will go to court, and you will get sued, and they will drag you over the coals because your program is lacking. So that is exactly what's going on with the owners who just don't care about safety. And a lot of them are just getting in accidents and then crossing their fingers, nothing happens. And when it does happen, we close that DOT number down and we open up a new one. We go back to work, and it's crazy. We've got to get out of it.
I had a conversation with someone who is an attorney that works for the insurance companies, and I wish I had the ability to record it, because she was telling me that more often than not, there's a deposition before it ever goes to trial.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say it's a simple fender bender, with $4,000 worth of damage, and someone just went to the doctor to make sure they were okay. And during the deposition, the plaintiff's attorneys will start asking, so describe your safety program. And they'll be asking, what are you required to do? Da, da, da. And as the insurance company attorney, oftentimes there's a nuisance settlement. So, hey, we'll pay for the damage, we'll pay for the doctor visit, and we'll give you $5,000 for the trouble, right? And sometimes the other side will accept that. But as soon as the plaintiff's attorney hears, oh, you got a safety program, great. Can I get the records to see what this driver's done? Oh, this month they didn't do their required safety video? I don't know what the exact number is, but that might have just added 25,000 to the nuisance settlement, because they know what's going to happen in a courtroom. It may have added 50,000. Like, they don't, now that the insurance company doesn't want this to get into a courtroom, because God forbid what they're going to find. But every little thing that you didn't dot the I of and cross the T of with the program just adds dollars to it that they're willing to pay to avoid a courtroom, because God forbid what a jury thinks of that.
Right.
I was horrified by the scale of the numbers.
And it's high, man. It's really high. And there's a lot of fear from insurance companies to go to court. And so you're absolutely right. We get in a deposition and they subpoena DQ files. That's the first thing that always gets subpoenaed. Let me see your driver qualification files. If there's one thing missing in there, then they start asking for more. And they start, well, let me see your policies. Let me see this. Let me see that. Let me see, and all of a sudden you're providing all the stuff that you have to provide because it's being subpoenaed. If you don't have it, it's a hard thing to sit on a stand or sitting in a deposition and go, well, I told my drivers they should do this.
Right?
Good. Nice job. You told them, prove it. Right? If you can't prove it, I mean, then you don't have a program. And if you don't have a program, you are going to go to trial. You will every time.
So when you work with owners, and maybe this is an unfair question, is setting up and running an effective safety program something that everyone could do, or is that more of a personality thing?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I think everybody has the capability of doing it. There is some personality that goes into it. And that personality is what do you care about most? Right? Are you focused on people So do you have a care and concern and a passion to care about people, whether they work for you or whether they're on the highway in your community? Do you care about them, or do you just care about money, making money, right? And that's, you got to invest. You got to invest in it. So the guys that I run into that don't care about people typically don't invest in a program. They have the bare minimum so they don't get caught, and everything else goes to the wayside.
But it sounds to me like running an effective safety program also requires a certain amount of OCD, detail-oriented, maniacal fixation on making sure everything's done and done right and documented. That's a personality trait. Like I know my wife, I wouldn't give her that job because she's not focused like that, but she's a great people person,
Right.
right?
I would tell you there's some simplified ways, in the industry to overcome that monotony, that OCD need for the documentation. If you build a process and say, here's a process, we're going to follow it. It doesn't have to be so meticulous like what we envision. It's really simple. I mean, EQ file process, you have a checklist, you checkbox it. That's it. I gathered this, I gathered this, I gathered this. You have listed out, here's the requirements for you to work for me. This is what I require you to have. Here's the minimum qualifications. You don't meet any of that, I don't hire you. I don't care if I have 4 seats empty. You don't meet my qualifications, you don't drive a truck for me. That's one of the big misses in the industry. I have 4 seats missing, and all they see is that's $8,000 a week that I'm missing out on in revenue, right? Of net revenue. I need that. And that's $32,000 a week with 4 trucks sitting there. So you're breathing, put a mirror up, great, get in my truck, go drive, right? That's part of the problem that we're seeing in the industry is there's the stress behind empty trucks. If you follow your program to a T, you'll not have empty trucks. You'll have a full staff. I got customers that have a line of drivers waiting to come work for them. I have a customer that has 15 drivers in the wings waiting to start with them. Sorry, something happened with my video there.
No worries. Maybe my dog.
Yeah, so I mean, there's people in the wings who work for good companies, and so there's not a driver shortage, in my opinion. I think what there is there's a shortage of companies who care enough to provide security for their drivers.
I guess my question is born from the fact that even though I have nothing to do with safety, I often talk to owners and they know that I talk to a lot of folks. And one of the questions that comes up is, should I be doing safety myself or should I be outsourcing that? And I'm trying to get to the bottom of, is there a type of owner where I should give one answer versus the other? And it doesn't sound like you need to have any special PhD to set up an effective safety program. But it does sound to me like you can't be one of these line haul owners who doesn't have enough hours in the day, that feels like a recipe for failure.
It comes down to capacity. If you don't have the capacity to manage your safety program, then you need to outsource it. You need to find somebody that can, because that's where people struggle the most. And that's really why I do what I do, is because there is a capacity issue. There's a ton of owners who want to do the right thing. And when everything comes to a head and you look at all the things you have to manage in your business to keep your business going, safety is the one that takes the back burner, because for whatever reason, it's viewed as the one that doesn't generate revenue. It's actually an expense in most people's eyes. And so capacity, I look at everything I got to do. I got to find drivers. I got to recruit drivers. I got to train drivers. I got to meet all of FedEx's expectations. I got to maintain my runs. I got to make sure I dispatch all my runs so I don't take a hit, right? So all that stuff just kind of lands on their plate. And when they're a small guy, 10 trucks, 15 trucks, it's just them typically. There's nobody else. And so when the grand scheme comes into play, how do I manage all my camera events? How do I manage all this? How do I manage hours of service? How do I manage my, all that? and stay engaged with my drivers on a safety level and still have a family life at the end, right? It's capacity.
Now, there are certain things in my world that I can kind of say, it's good enough, right? I didn't make my bed this morning. The world's not going to stop, right?
Right.
I was supposed to take the dogs out to let them go at this hour, and I was half an hour late. They were fine, right?
Right.
It feels to me like the safety stuff, especially when you talk about what these lawyers will do when they dig into your records, that's not the place you want to say, it's good enough.
You
And
can't.
sort of leave things undone.
You absolutely can't. That's why we're getting hit so hard in the industry, because people have said, that's good enough. I meet the minimum requirements, right? I met FMCSA's requirements. Compliance isn't safety. That's the problem. We're saying I've got all these requirements. I meet all these requirements, and quite frankly, I would say 90% of the companies I go into, they're not even meeting the bare minimum requirements. Most of them are missing the mark. And so we have this focus on, well, compliance is safety. Well, it's not. Safety is much deeper than that. Safety is guiding and directing your drivers to behave and act in a safe way and holding them accountable to those expectations. There's not a regulation that fine tunes, you must do this, and this in your safety program in FMCSA. So that's why there's so much confusion. Well, I'm meeting the regulations. Great, good job. You're compliant, but you're not safe. And that's where people are struggling, I believe, is how do I hold my drivers accountable? How do I stay engaged with them? How do I have positive behavior change? Essentially, how do I become a steward of these human beings that I've decided to take underneath my wing? And that's a daunting task. It's kind of scary when you think about it in those terms. There's a lot that goes into it when you think about it that way, right? But I think there's a need to increase the capacity of these owners. There's a need to say, look, if you can't handle it, let somebody else handle it for you. Bring in somebody or hire somebody to handle it for you, so you're not sitting on the stand when you are subpoenaed and say, I thought I had enough. I thought it was good. I had a DQ file. Great. You don't have anything else that's going to mitigate loss. I think that's the big miss in the industry right now.
You mentioned something there. Maybe that's a good point to segue, because we've been talking a lot about owners and their own need to build a safety program. Let's talk a little bit about drivers. Okay. If you're the owner and you're trying to inculcate a culture of safety, if you're trying to work one-on-one with people you've hired, people who work for you, is the ability to effectively communicate how important safety is to a driver, is that a special skill that not everybody has?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. You have your old school management. Okay, old school management was do as I say because I asked you to, right? And the old school way of responding to that was, yes, sir, I'll go do it. We no longer live in that world, right? And I still believe that mentality of go and do it. Like I was a yes, sir. I didn't, yes, sir. I was raised on a farm. I'm technically a millennial. You know what I mean? I fall in that generation. I think my work ethic was way different than my generation, though. I would just go and do. You asked me to do something, I did it, right? That's not the industry that we're in right now. A lot of the people are asking, well, why? Why should I do it? I have a better way. I know more. I just came out of college. I want to be the president. You know what I mean? That instant gratification, and we've got to kind of change the way that we manage to that. And some of these guys that are coming in, I mean, they're entrepreneurs, which means they're probably got a work ethic similar to mine, and that's kind of it's been a kind of a clash that we're seeing in how we manage. So one of the biggest things that I teach is transparency. Get transparent with your drivers. If you want them to be involved in your safety program, make them part of your safety program. Be transparent with them. Here's why it's important to me, and then here's why it should be important to you. Educate them. I think a lot of drivers don't understand that they can be personally sued, that they will be subpoenaed. I've had drivers who have received court documents from, served at home in front of their wife and kids, and all of a sudden the fear is real. And I interviewed one of them after he received papers by being served, and I said to him, what did that feel like? And he's like, it was the scariest thing I've ever been in. He's like, I started looking at my bank accounts going, do I have enough to survive this? Like, that becomes very real. And these drivers don't understand that. That'll never happen to me. That's never going to happen to me until it does. And we have to educate them. You will be personally sued. You will have to go to court. Your family's welfare will be put on the line, period. And then teach them, this is why it's important to me, because I don't want you to be sitting on the stand. So here's why you have to be involved in the program. I want you home safe every day. I want your family safe every day. You are under attack, and here's why, and here's how we're going to protect you against it. That is the big miss in the industry when it comes to teaching drivers, is we're not transparent enough. Get open with them. Have conversations with them about what you're seeing and what they're seeing.
But let's rewind the tape just a moment, figuratively. Whoever's editing this, please don't rewind the tape. You said there are some owners who really shouldn't be the person trying to do that.
Yeah.
Now, I know myself well enough to know, if you put me in the role of trying to do what you just described with drivers, huge F. I mean, total fail. I am not equipped mentally, emotionally, whatever it is, to do that well. I understand the importance of it, but you might as well ask me to go dance a ballet or play a piano. I mean, forget it. We're doomed with putting me in that role. For owners who are listening to you speak, they've all got a safety program. Maybe they all created it. How do they know? Is there something they can see in the mirror when they're shaving or getting in the morning to know, I'm not doing this right, I should be getting help?
So here's a tall tale sign. If you're probably not the right person. When you wake up and you look at a problem that a driver has created, do you say to yourself, this driver keeps doing this to me? This driver constantly is doing this on purpose to affect me. This driver is purposefully causing this issue because he dislikes me. If you're referring it to yourself and the outcome is they're doing it to me, then you're probably not the person to be dealing with that driver. That means you're focused on you and the outcome of what that driver is going to do to you. You're more focused on them being a transaction to get what you want. If you look at them and go, this driver needs my help because clearly there's something else causing him to do what he's doing, and I think I can help him with that. So together we can achieve what we need to achieve, then you're the right person to manage that driver.
I hope anybody watching realizes what you just said is pure gold. I hope they just paid real close attention to that as an owner, to what you just said.
We call it, there's actually a book out there. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. And it talks a lot about being in the box and out of the box. If you're in the box with somebody, that means that you're constantly a victim of their decisions, a victim of what they're doing, and you treat them differently. If you don't have empathy, and we all know what empathy is. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in their shoes. If you can't do that with anybody, you're not the person to manage human beings. You're probably the person in the back managing the business. And you can't teach empathy. Empathy is just kind of one of those qualities that's kind of developed and built, and you can teach ungenuine empathy, but genuine empathy is kind of a natural trait. Those are the people who should be managing other human beings.
I would add to that, though, empathy and management takes significant investment in time and energy. And if you're running around with your phone exploding and trying to do 82 things and working 90 hours a week as an owner, you don't have a deep enough reservoir of time or energy to be properly empathetic and do
I
that.
agree with that. And the other thing to it is sometimes we think empathy is, well, I just have to care about you, and I got to give you everything you need, and
That's
throw
sympathy.
all that stuff at you. I see so many people who manage the drivers of just saying yes, and I'm like, hold on. Like, if you truly cared about them and you truly had empathy for them, accountability is part of having empathy, right? I love my kids to death. I love my boys, and I have one girl. I have 4 boys and a girl, right? Right now I have a son who just went through knee surgery. Okay. And it was a pretty big deal. I mean, it's been very, very difficult for him. Day one, I waited on him hand and foot. Okay. I was concerned for him. I loved him through my service to him. Day two, I served him about 75% the way I did on day one. Day three, he was like, "Why don't you love me?" And it was because I'm like, "You're gonna get up and you're gonna move around and you're gonna go, dish up your own breakfast and you're gonna do your laundry." And he's like, "How come you don't love me?" And I'm like, "I do love you. I want you to be self-reliant, right? I need you to be accountable to you because I can't wait on you hand and foot and you're never gonna heal, right?" And I think that's the same in the way we manage our drivers. If I wait on you hand and foot, you're never going to learn. You're never going to grow. You're never going to make your own decisions. And I deal with companies that have driver managers or supervisors that take 1.5 million phone calls throughout the night. And I know this is pretty common in the FedEx world, where you're just getting bombarded with phone call after phone call after phone call for things that your driver probably has the ability to make a decision and to make the right decision. But are you educating them or are you disabling them? And empathy is part of holding them accountable. Empathy is part of creating some self-reliance on them. You have the ability to make this decision. I've given you all the tools. I've built the program for you to make the right decisions. Now go and do it. And if you make the wrong one, we're going to sit down, we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to help you make the right one in the future. Right? That's empathy. That's having care and concern for people. I was, when we were at the Linehouse Summit, somebody brought up in that Linehouse Summit, I'm afraid to hold my drivers accountable because I don't want them to change the perception of me. And I'm like, well, shame on you. Like, you're allowing that person to go out and kill themselves. What's the perception of their family going to be when you don't hold them accountable to drive safe on the roadway? Right? You should have protected them. Your accountability is that protection. You have to care enough to give them the tools to be successful, and part of those tools is holding them accountable. I teach this a lot and talk about it a lot. I'm very passionate about being a steward of human beings. That's what your safety program is. And if you hate humans, if you're not a people person, don't manage people. Period. Doesn't work. You'll ruin your culture. You really will.
Well, I'm sure that in the line haul owner space, there's the natural bell curve, right, of abilities in that regard. But I think you're right. If that's not your skill, you should be bringing someone onto your team and empowering them to take care of that management of folks.
Right. The other way of managing drivers that is a little bit different than managing owners or getting buy-in from owners is we do a lot of accusing drivers. The industry, the old way of safety management of accusing drivers. Hey, you're the reason why this occurred, right? Let's take camera events, because I know this is kind of a hot topic for FedEx contractors, right? trying to meet these KPIs, and we're so focused on the KPIs that I think we've lost sight of the behaviors that are occurring, right? And instead of really changing the behavior, if you managed your behaviors, your KPIs would go the way you want them to all the time. You would have no behaviors, right? So we get so focused on KPIs that we forget that we have the opportunity to mentor a human being to be better tomorrow than they were today. And a lot of times the way we're coaching when we see those camera events is, hey, cut the crap, stop doing this, don't do it anymore, right? That doesn't work. We teach a lot of teaching drivers, hey, what's allowing you to be distracted? What's allowing you to look at your phone? What's causing that? And let that driver talk about it. Let them open up and discuss, this is what's going on in my life, and this is why I'm on my phone. Okay, well, write that down. What else is causing that? Write that down. What else is causing that? Write that down, right? And then asking them, what happens if this behavior doesn't change? And instead of accusing them, I'm pointing the finger at something, not them. And when we get into true root cause of why something occurs, and you're ending with a human being, you've missed the ball completely. We have to start looking at what's allowing you to do something, what's causing you to do something, and go and fix that which is usually something. And sometimes it might be you, it might be your management, it might be your lack of management, it might be your policies, it might be your equipment, it might be the way you hired. That might be the root cause to why behavior exists. But all this time that we're pointing, hey, driver, you knock it off, it's you, it's you, it's you. And then the behavior never changes. And then we fire that driver and we can't figure out why we're losing drivers. It's probably because you're not getting to the true reason why a behavior existed in the first place. Fix that and your behaviors go away, and to hell with the KPIs at that point, right? If you don't have events, does it matter if you have KPIs or not?
Right.
And I think we focus so much on the KPIs in the FedEx world that we're missing the ball of, I should change behaviors first, and then my KPIs will dial themselves in. They really will. I mean, we have cameras for a reason, and I think they're way underutilized. I think that's a big miss in the industry right now with our drivers. I tell drivers all the time, every time I have a meeting and I talk about cameras, I say, hey, you like football? Well, yeah, I love football. Okay, who's your favorite football player? And they'll throw out some guy. Usually it's a quarterback. Sometimes it's a good quarterback. And I'll ask him, does that quarterback watch video footage of his previous plays? And they're like, well, yeah. Well, why does he do that? Because he's a professional. He wants to be better. Aren't you a professional? Well, yeah. So maybe we should watch some video of your previous plays, learn from them, figure out what went wrong in that play. So then tomorrow you can make that play again and make the right move. Well, that makes sense, right? Now they're bought into the program. Now it's them. It's their program. It's my video footage for me to become better instead of video footage for you to push me out the door. That is the big miss in the industry. And that's the difference in how the industry is managing drivers and how we should be managing drivers.
Wow. Your passion's just absurd. It explodes off the screen talking to you. I mean, good on you.
Thanks, man. I've lived it. I was a driver. I watched a pretty horrific accident happen on the highway 6 months into me having my CDL, and I made a commitment that day that I was going to do something different for the industry. We had to make a change. Families need to stop dying on the highway at our hands, and we're causing it. Most of it. There's some things that are happening in the industry that are bogus, right? But people need to stop passing away unnecessarily. We've got to start treating our drivers like the knights of the road again, and we've lost sight of that. So I made a commitment that night when I dodged bodies on the highway as a driver that I would do something different, and that's where my passion comes from. That's really what led me to where I'm at now, almost 20 years later. So,
Jon, we've been talking for quite a while. Before we wrap up, is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, that you can think of, or did we cover the things you were hoping to talk about today?
no, I think, I mean, I could talk for hours on this subject, man.
I could listen to you talk about it for hours.
There's so much that we could do differently, and we're always going to be looking for change. And here's kind of my final thoughts for those who are watching this and listening. Dig in and do some self-reflection, and identify if you're the right person for your safety program, and have the maturity in your business to maybe step away if you're not, and find somebody that can. Because if you want to drive change, get somebody in there that's got all the qualities that we talked about in this video. That's where you're gonna see the biggest bang for your buck. And some of that's going to require you to mentor them in areas. Some of that's going to require you to find some training for them. You're not going to find somebody who comes with 25, 30 years of experience to manage your business at 15, 20 trucks, right? Those guys don't exist. So you might have to do some development, but know your limits, and don't be a victim to your limits. It's a bad way to sit on the stand. It really is.
So Jon, in post-production editing, we're going to put all your contact info on the screen and down in the comments where we post this to YouTube. I think it goes without saying that if somebody wants to hire you, they can of course call you. But is it all right if someone just wants to talk to you about safety and better understand what they should be doing, that they can give you a call?
100%. I'll actually provide you with a link to my calendar, and they can actually schedule a Zoom meeting with me for no obligation. They can sit down and talk with me anytime. Yep.
For those watching, I've had the chance to sit down and share a meal with Jon. You need to take advantage of that offer. Even if you have no intention of ever hiring him, you need to take advantage of that, because to get to learn from him is just a gift. So thank you for that, Jon. Yeah,
thank you. What a compliment, man. I love this industry. I love people. I'm not afraid to say it. I genuinely have a love for mankind, and that includes the owners of businesses and their drivers and the people that work for them. If anybody needs to bounce ideas or needs help, I'm an open book, man. I don't have any secrets on my experience. We can talk all day long.
A million thanks, Jon. And I hope that you'll join us again in the not too distant future to talk all things safety and anything else that's on your mind in the trucking space.
Absolutely. Anytime, man.
All right. Be well. Thank you.